Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to picture this. It's February 1948. We're in the Strait of Malacca. That's a major shipping lane between Malaysia and Indonesia. The weather is totally clear, the sea is dead calm. Eerily enough, this is the exact same body of water where Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 would vanish decades later. But on this particular sunny day in 1948, the quiet is suddenly shattered by an absolutely impossible broadcast from a ship called the SS Ourang Medan.
And this broadcast, it didn't end with your standard plea for help. It ended with two simple, absolutely chilling words: I die. Just imagine being a radio operator, sitting there in a quiet room, slowly decoding those final, desperate letters right before the line goes completely, permanently dead. I mean, it instantly establishes these massive life or death stakes that turns a piece of maritime history into a literal true crime nightmare. Now, you might be wondering, why was a ship in 1948 relying on dots and dashes instead of just picking up a microphone? Well, normal audio transmissions rely on line of sight, right? They're super easily distorted by fog or humidity, and the audio can just fade out entirely. But Morse code? It is incredibly reliable. It punches right through atmospheric interference across thousands of kilometers. So, because they used Morse code, this terrifying message reached nearby ships with undeniable, crystal clear clarity. So here is how this nightmare actually unfolded chronologically. It built really fast. It started with a classic SOS. The very first decoded message read, SOS, SOS, steamship SS Ourang Medan requests ships with shortwave wireless to contact a doctor immediately. But before anyone could even hit reply, a second message came through. Probably second officer is dead. Other crew members are also dead. Request immediate assistance from a warship. They fired off their coordinates, and then came that abrupt final transmission. I die. After that, nothing but complete, eerie radio silence. Ships were desperately responding, but the Ourang Medan never answered back. Every single ship in the vicinity knew immediately that a horrific situation was unfolding. Enter our detectives for this explainer, the crew of an American merchant ship called the Silver Star. Being the closest vessel to the coordinates, their captain didn't hesitate for a second. He immediately altered his course, racing toward that silent SOS, totally bracing his crew for a sinking ship or, maybe even an ongoing pirate attack. A few hours later, the Silver Star actually spots the vessel on the horizon. But what they saw completely defied their expectations. The SS Ourang Medan was in practically perfect physical condition. There's no visible hull damage, it's definitely not taking on water. But there were these massive red flags. Despite being a steamship, there wasn't a single wisp of smoke coming from the chimney, and there was literally zero movement on deck. The captain is blasting the horns, calling out over the loudspeakers, but the only response they get is the sound of crashing waves. Receiving absolute silence in return, the captain decides he has to send a rescue team over. Imagine this for a second. Pulling up alongside this massive, dead silent steel giant in the middle of the ocean. You climb up the side ladders and finally step foot onto the deck. The very first thing the team noticed was this sudden, totally unnatural drop in temperature. It was inexplicably freezing on board, and the silence was just deafening. No engine hum, no voices. They were basically walking into a literal nightmare. What they actually discovered up there has fueled decades of nightmares. There were bodies scattered everywhere. The captain lay dead right on the bridge. The entire crew was deceased, and their faces were literally frozen in pure terror. We're talking eyes wide open, mouths agape, arms outstretched like they were fighting off some invisible monster. Even the ship's dog was frozen dead in this aggressive teeth-baring stance. But here is the absolute most crucial detail of the entire scene. Zero blood. No trauma, no signs of physical combat at all. Down in the radio room, the operator lay dead, his fingers still resting on that Morse code key. Completely horrified, the rescue team made the call to tow the ship back to port. But the very second they attached their heavy tow ropes, thick, black smoke suddenly starts billowing out from cargo hold number 4. Within seconds, this escalates into a totally violent, uncontrollable fire ripping through the lower decks. The rescue team is forced to literally hack the tow lines with axes and run for their lives back to the Silver Star. And thank goodness they did, because moments later, a massive earth-shattering explosion blew the SS Ourang Medan to pieces, sinking the ship and all of its secrets straight to the bottom of the ocean. Okay, stop right there. Up until this exact moment, this sounds like the absolute perfect ghost story, right? Cursed waters, frozen faces, a vanishing ship. But we are executing a hard pivot here. We're leaving the supernatural stuff behind because this explainer is all about digging for the actual truth. So was this a ghost ship, or was it a highly orchestrated human cover-up? Let's break down the rigorously documented clues that were left behind. Now, the very first hurdle in any investigation is establishing the victim's identity. Researchers immediately went to Lloyd's shipping register, which is basically the definitive official global record of all merchant ships. But when they searched for the SS Ourang Medan, nothing. No record found. Officially, this ship did not exist. Because there was no physical wreckage left after the explosion and zero official registration, a lot of skeptics immediately wrote the whole thing off as a myth, just some tall tale invented by the crew of the Silver Star. But as we know, history always leaves breadcrumbs. Jump ahead to 1954, and a Dutch newspaper published interviews with former sailors who swore they actually worked on the Ourang Medan. Their testimony blew this case wide open. They claimed the ship wasn't registered because it was operating under a completely fake name. Why? Well, in those chaotic years right after World War II, this ship was allegedly part of a super lucrative black market smuggling ring moving illegal goods. And believe it or not, the plot thickens at the absolute highest levels of government. In May 2003, the CIA declassified a massive batch of secret files. Sitting right there in those files was a letter written on May 29, 1958, explicitly detailing the Ourang Medan tragedy. The author of this letter told the CIA that if they could solve the mystery of the Ourang Medan, it might actually unlock the answers to several other unexplained disappearances of planes and ships. The fact that the CIA kept a letter about a supposed mythical ghost ship, highly classified for 45 years, that tells us there was some very real smoke to this fire. So, moving right into the deadly cargo theories. If it wasn't ghosts, what actually killed this crew and blew up the ship? Let's look at the actual science of the terror. The post-World War II era left behind a massive surplus of incredibly dangerous chemicals. One major theory is that the Ourang Medan was smuggling potassium cyanide. Here's the chemistry. If that compound is improperly stored and gets exposed to salty seawater, it instantly creates an incredibly toxic, asphyxiating chemical gas. This gas attacks the lungs in seconds, causing rapid suffocation. That perfectly, scientifically explains why the crew died so suddenly, why there were zero physical wounds, and why their faces were frozen in gasping terror. They suffocated on an invisible poison. But what about that earth-shattering explosion? Well, that brings us to a second rumored smuggled chemical, nitroglycerin. It is a highly unstable, wildly volatile explosive compound. The thing about nitroglycerin is it doesn't even need a detonator. A simple change in temperature, a harsh jolt from a wave, or just sloppy storage can cause it to spontaneously ignite. This completely and effortlessly explains that sudden fire in cargo hold 4 when they started towing it, which led directly to the massive explosion that erased all the physical evidence. Now, there is also a much darker geopolitical theory here that we need to impartially look at. Some researchers point directly to Unit 731. That was the infamous Japanese military unit responsible for some truly horrific biological and chemical weapons experiments during the war. After Japan surrendered, the U.S. government secretly acquired a lot of this data. This theory proposes the Ourang Medan was actually a Black Ops vessel secretly transporting deadly biological weapons or nerve agents derived from those Unit 731 experiments. A leak in that cargo wipes out the crew instantly, and the resulting explosion acts as the perfect cover-up for a highly illegal top-secret mission. So when you lay out the facts side by side, notice how perfectly the physical evidence actually aligns with logic rather than the supernatural. No physical wounds, completely explained by either toxic gas or a bioweapon. The sudden explosion, easily unstable nitroglycerin or a deliberate scuttling to hide the evidence. The fact that the ship was totally unregistered, it was either a black market smuggling ring or a classified secret mission. When you look at it this way, the ghosts disappear and human error takes center stage. Let's summarize the key takeaways we've uncovered in this explainer. First off, a lack of official registration absolutely does not mean the ship didn't exist. Fake-named, unregistered ships were actually incredibly common during the chaotic post-WWI smuggling boom. Second, basic chemistry, specifically an invisible toxic gas leak, perfectly, scientifically explains the terrifying, supposedly supernatural deaths of the crew and the ship's dog. And finally, volatile smuggled explosives conveniently and permanently erased the physical proof, leaving behind a mystery that was very easily sensationalized by the public. We've successfully dismantled the myth to reveal a very real, very human tragedy born out of dangerous secrecy.
The crazy story of the SS Ourang Medan really reminds us that no matter how much humanity advances, we are still totally at the mercy of basic chemistry and hidden political agendas, which leaves us with this final provocative thought. If a massive steel ship carrying highly toxic illegal cargo can simply vanish into the deep blue, how many other deadly human secrets are still perfectly preserved right now, hidden away in the darkest, silent depths of our oceans? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning everything, and I will see you next time.